They destroyed everything. I came home on a Tuesday evening and found my grandfather's 43-year-old hunting cabin reduced to nothing but splinters and sawdust. Right there in the wreckage, standing like she'd just conquered Rome, was our HOA president, Brittany Turner, smiling in her crisp white blazer, holding a clipboard, and handing me a $20,000 demolition bill. That was her victory dance, her big statement to the neighborhood. This is what happens when you don't pay your fees. She had no idea the storm she'd just unleashed. Let me back up. My name is James Rogers. I'm in my mid-40s. A federal judge, but in my neighborhood most folks think I'm just some mid-level guy with a 9-to-5 downtown. That old cabin wasn't just a shed in my backyard, it was family history carved into wood. My grandfather built it in 1974, long before the HOA even existed. It's where he taught me to whittle, where I taught my nephew to fish, where I planned to propose to Linda, my partner, just like my father had proposed to my mother on that very porch. Every nail, every board held memories. And in a single afternoon, Brittany decided it was trash. She'd been circling me for months. Little violation letters showed up in the mail fence, too high, shrubs not trimmed, unauthorized structure. The usual HOA noise. I ignored them because legally the cabin was grandfathered and protected forever under state law. She either didn't care or didn't bother to check. Brittany had built her reputation on intimidating old couples and young families, people who couldn't afford a fight. She thought I was just another easy mark. That Tuesday, pulling into my driveway at 6:15, I froze behind the wheel. The space behind my house was empty, obliterated. My heart raced, my mind spinning between disbelief and rage. I stepped out, crunching over broken boards I recognized from the porch where I'd carved my initials as a boy. Brittany waved her clipboard like a queen addressing peasants. "Jim," she called, her voice syrupy sweet. "I hoped to catch you before you saw this. Quite a shock, I know." She held out a document, an emergency structural hazard order signed by someone named Michael Davis, allegedly a city inspector. She rattled off violations and fees with the smugness of someone who truly believed she was untouchable. I tried to argue, but the deputy sheriff who showed up looked at the paperwork, took a report, and all but shrugged. To him, it was just a civil matter, and when he drove away, I stood alone in the ruins of my family's history. That night was the lowest I felt in years. I sat in the dark, staring at the rubble, wondering if maybe I was the fool here. Maybe fighting was pointless. Maybe I should sell, walk away, let Brittany win like she always did. For a brief moment, I almost convinced myself I'd lost. But then I pulled that so-called demolition order under the beam of my phone flashlight. Something about it stank. The letterhead was crooked, the signature sloppy, and when I searched city records, there was no Michael Davis anywhere, no inspector, no authority. That lie lit a spark. If the paperwork was fake, Brittany hadn't just overstepped, she'd committed a felony. I called Linda. The sharp intake of her breath told me she understood instantly. "Don't pay a dime," she said. "Don't sign anything. We'll bury her with her own lies." The next morning, I marched into the county clerk's office. Margaret, who had worked property records since the 80s, studied the order with a frown. "This is highly irregular," she said. "Emergency demolitions require multiple approvals and public notice. This has none. And besides, your cabin predates the HOA. They had no authority whatsoever." She pulled the original 1974 permits, valid, protected, untouchable. That was the moment the pieces clicked. Brittany hadn't demolished my cabin over landscaping violations. She did it because my property was the final piece her company needed for a multi-million-dollar development deal. Then came the envelope, slipped under my door at night, filled with Brittany's own handwritten notes, phases of her plan. Research targets, fake documents, demolition, extortion, and Phase 4 permanent elimination of property ownership. She even described victims as sheep too stupid to understand real power. She'd been running a predatory scheme for years, forcing families out and flipping their homes for profit. And she thought I'd be next. I realized I wasn't just fighting for my cabin. I was fighting for every family she'd steamrolled. So when Brittany called an emergency HOA meeting, I went. She strutted into the community center with charts and a PowerPoint about safety enforcement. She painted herself as a savior, claiming the cabin was seconds from collapse, citing bogus engineering diagrams. Neighbors nodded along until I stood. "Mrs. Turner," I said, keeping my tone even, "can you show us the specific legal authority that lets an HOA demolish a grandfathered structure from 1974? The room went dead silent. She stumbled, tried bureaucratic doublespeak, then lashed out personally. "Jim thinks his government job makes him special," she sneered. Some neighbors looked shocked. The cracks in her armor were showing. But Brittany wasn't done. No, she doubled down. She organized what she called a community education seminar, a live-streamed event where she'd teach HOA leaders nationwide how to handle entitled government employees. She turned the community center into a mini TV studio, lights, cameras, the works. She thought it would be her crowning moment. For me, it was the perfect trap. I created an anonymous account, Truthseeker 2024, to join the live stream chat. As Brittany preened at her podium, I typed, "What if your research misses something about the government employee?" She read it aloud, eager to show off. "Impossible," she said. "I never miss. Government workers are weak, underpaid, desperate to avoid conflict. Take Jim Rogers. My research shows he's just a low-level bureaucrat. No real power." She laughed, confident, certain. That was my cue. I stood up in the back of the hall. The cameras swung toward me. Neighbors gasped. I walked slowly to the front, pulled a small leather case from my pocket, and flipped it open. "Actually, Brittany," I said, my voice carrying through the room, "I think there's been a misunderstanding." I held the credentials high so everyone could see. "I'm the Honorable James Rogers, United States Federal Judge." The silence was electric. Her face drained of color. In one instant, she realized she'd just confessed on camera live to a federal judge. She tried to shout, "Turn off the camera, shut it down." But it was too late. Hundreds of viewers were already watching her meltdown, recording, sharing. Every word she'd spoken about harassing families, forging documents, targeting sheep was immortalized online. Neighbors erupted, some yelling questions, others staring at her like they'd seen a ghost. Brittany clutched the podium, her voice cracking. "You think you know power? Tomorrow you'll learn real authority." But she wasn't convincing anyone anymore. She was finished. The fallout was instant. By morning, the clips had gone viral, millions of views, hashtags mocking HOA Karen and government boy. Reporters called nonstop. Victims from other states came forward. The FBI, who'd been quietly investigating Turner Properties, suddenly had the smoking gun they needed. Within weeks, Brittany was indicted on charges ranging from mail and wire fraud to conspiracy and civil rights violations. In court, her own live stream played as evidence. She never even made it through sentencing without breaking down. The HOA queen who thought she ruled us all was led away in shackles. And me. I stood there the night of that reveal as neighbors whispered, phones buzzed, cameras rolled, and I realized something simple and crystal clear. Real authority doesn't come from intimidation or phony documents. It comes from truth and law. And when someone builds their empire on lies, sometimes the best revenge is just letting them destroy themselves while you record every second.